Chapter 2. Now, the first lesson, as I said, it's not accumulated to this lesson. So this lesson talk about classification of business. Now, I want to open a business and I want to classify the business, or I want to know which stage my business will be in. So I'm going to classify business according to the economic activity that you're going to make, what you're going to produce, or what you're going to make. Some businesses may make farming, for example, grow crops, okay? Or some business may manufacture cars. Another business may be like hotels or banks. So we're going to classify the business according to the activity that they're going to make. So the first classification, did you see the screen that I shared with you?
Yes.
Okay. So the first one is primary sector. What's primary sector? Primary sector is just to bring something from earth, just to extract something from earth. You depend on natural resources. You do not manufacture anything. You do not convert anything. Like what? Like extracting oil, for example, petrol, like extracting a copper from the earth, like fishing. Now I depend on the natural resources, which is the sea. I will get out some fish from the sea. Or farming. All of these are kind of primary sector. So if you're going to make something, you're going to get raw material from earth, actually natural raw material or natural resources from earth. So you are in what? You are in primary sector. Okay, so what's primary sector? As you may see here, extract and use the natural resources of earth to produce raw material used by other businesses, like, for example, extraction of oil and copper, farming and fishing. So I'm going to get this raw material for what? To sell it to another business. What the other business going to do with this raw material? He's going to convert this raw material into finished goods. Like what? For example, I extracted iron from the earth. I will give it to a car manufacturer or a car producer. Now he's going to take from me this iron and he will convert it into finished goods, which is car. Now we are in secondary sector. So secondary sector, he's going to convert the raw material into finished goods. So he will manufacture something. It depends on manufacturing goods. So manufactures goods by using raw material provided by primary sector. Example, aircraft, car manufacturing, construction, baking. In baking, I'm going to get raw materials, then I will convert it into finished good, which is bread or cakes or whatever. Okay, so anything, any product is converted to finished, any raw material converted into finished goods or final product. So we are talking about what? Secondary sector. Now, what's the third sector? It's called tertiary sector. What's tertiary sector? Tertiary sector depends mainly in providing services to customer. Only service. You do not give any finished goods to or making any finished goods. He just provides service to customer. Like what? Like banks. What's happening in bank? Are you gonna to get anything from bank? No, it's just service that you're gonna to put your money into the bank. Hotels, you will just book a room. Insurance, they give you medical insurance service. Hairdressing, cleaning houses, you will just get service. So what's this sector now? It's called tertiary sector. Okay. Malak, try to mute your mic because you are making some noise. And if you want to ask about something, just raise your hand. Okay. Now we're going to take this activity and we will see, I will give you some businesses and I want you to tell me this business related to which sector. So insurance. Yassine. Insurance. It's kind of which sector? Primary, secondary, or tertiary? So the first question that you have to ask yourself, what does insurance provide? He gives me raw material, he gives me finished goods, actually natural raw material, he gives me finished goods, or he provides service. Yassine. Okay, Ahmed.
The insurance is the tertiary sector.
Excellent. So insurance, we're gonna to put tick under tertiary sector. Forestry, Malak. Forestry, something related to forest, like maybe cutting trees or whatever. So forestry, it's kind of what?
Farming.
Yes, which sector? What you said, farming?
Yeah, of primary sector, right?
Primary sector, yes. Okay. Coal mining, coal mining. Yassine, I want you to contribute with us. Coal mining. Fine, okay. We're not wasting our time. I will solve it with you. Coal mining, of course, primary, because I'm going to extract raw material from earth. Computer assembly, it's secondary sector because I'm going to manufacture or collect computers. Travel agent, it's tertiary because he just give me a service. Bakery, it's secondary because he converted raw material into finished goods. Car showroom, who can tell me car showroom, it's kind of what? Ahmed.
A car showroom is tertiary because it shows you the cars.
Yes. So any business sells something, so it's tertiary because he just give you a service. But you may think, but I'm gonna to take product. Actually, the business who made the product is in the secondary sector, but the one who sells the product is in the tertiary sector. Okay, and this is the answer of what we have said. Okay, now if I ask you, which sector is most important sector? Which sector, primary, secondary, or tertiary? Which sector is important? Actually, I couldn't determine which one is important because all of them is important, and it differs from one country to another. Differs according to what? I have two factors that will affect which sector is most important sector for any country. Number one, how many people employed in each sector? Suppose that I'm talking about primary sector, I have 100,000 person, and in tertiary I have 50,000 person, and in secondary I have 80. So in this case, which one is most important for me as a country? A, for example, it will be primary because I have most number of or largest number of employees. Or I may look at the output. Which sector produces more output? Or how much I will gain from each sector. For example, the first sector gives me $1 million, secondary gives me 5 million, and tertiary gives me 10 million. So in this case, tertiary will be the most important. So which sector is most important? It depends on two factors. First factor, percentage of country's total number of workers employed in each sector. How many workers employed in each sector? Or value of output of goods and service, and proportion this of total national income. Total national income is $100 million. Now, the first one is $20 million, which represent 20% proportion, which means the percentage. So 20%. The other is 2%. So which one is most important? The one which is 20%. Now, if I'm talking about a specific kind of countries, like what? Like developed countries. Developed countries. What's developed countries? Developed countries, the countries which is already developed, yani already rich and already have more technology and more output and more level of standard. Okay, so which sector is most important? So I'm talking about the second two sectors, secondary and tertiary. Okay, then the primary. Primary only for developing country, poor country, the country that depends mainly on natural resources because they do not have technology or they do not have money in order to make factories and stuff like this. Okay, so if I asked you which sector is most important and I stopped without determining the kind of the country, so you will say it depends on two factors: percentage of number of workers employed in each sector, or value of output, of goods and service proportion to total national income. Now, if I said which sector is most important sector in developed countries, so you will say secondary and tertiary. So if I said developing country, so you will say primary sector. Okay. Now, sometimes the country's important sector may differ. For example, it depends first on primary sector. This sector is the most important sector for them, okay? But the natural resources depleted. It's finished. So of course, I have to search for another sector. If I don't have any other natural resources, so I have to try to produce something in order to be able to survive as a country, okay? So sometimes the primary sector, the importance of primary sector switch to tertiary or secondary. Why? Because the natural resources has depleted, okay? So source for some primary products such as oil, copper become depleted. So it may concentrate more in secondary sector rather than primary sector. Another thing, there is some competition in the market. For example, USA was, or actually UK first, was the most country that has industry. The most industrialized country, has a lot of industry in it. Now, if I asked you, which country has most industry than the other? UK or China? Of course, now everything made by China, right? So now, according to the competitiveness that occurred in the market, I may get rid from the competition in the secondary sector and switch to another sector. If I have natural resources, so I may concentrate more in primary sector. If I don't, so I'm going to try to concentrate in tertiary sector and provide some services. Another reason, the living standard of the people. When people's living standard increases, so they're going to ask for more luxurious service. They want to travel, they want to go to hotels, they want some luxurious service, they will go to beauty centers, they may make some medical surgeries, okay? So when the living standard rise for people, so of course the country has to concentrate more in tertiary sector, okay? So this is the reasons for how the importance of one sector may change to another. Okay,
Teacher Ines,
yes.
actually, I didn't understand one thing
Yes, which is
about the secondary and tertiary.
what? Secondary, we said that secondary is to convert raw material into finished goods. You're going to produce something. Tertiary, you're going to provide service only. Service. You will be a travel agent, so you will pick people from one place to another. You didn't give them any product, you will just give them service. Hairdressing, you will go to a beauty center to fix your hair. So it's service, so it's tertiary. Okay? But what about if you buy a shampoo? So shampoo in this case will be secondary. Okay? The business yani, that made shampoo, this means secondary. Now here he give you example of Bangladesh that they concentrated mainly in agriculture, okay? A high proportion of the population worked in farming, either to produce crops for their own consumption or to sell in local markets. Secondary manufacturing activities were not very important, and the tertiary sector was also small as income were very low and people had little spare cash to spend on service, okay? This was in 1970. Okay, this was in Bangladesh. This is the case study that I'm talking about. Okay, but in 2017, Bangladesh had undergone significant change. Although 40% of the workforce still work in agriculture, primary production of goods such as tobacco and food has fallen in relative terms. Manufacturing industry, namely food processing and clothing, have expanded rapidly. Tertiary service such as telecommunication, transport, and finance now contribute approximately half of the total national output, which means at the beginning in 1970, they depend mainly in agriculture and in growing crops, which means in primary sector. In 2017, they made some, they produced some goods like tobacco and food, and half of their income depends on tertiary sector, okay? And here he gives you the percentage in each year. In 1970, 53% was in primary, 15% secondary, 32% in tertiary. 2017, 15% primary, 29% secondary, and 56% tertiary. What's the question? Refer to the case study above. Explain 2 possible reasons why the relative importance of primary output has fallen. Now, as you see, primary sector here was 53 in 1970, and it becomes 15%. Why this percentage has fallen like this? He wants 2 reasons. So I will go by my mind back to the change in relative importance in each sector. Primary decline. First reason maybe for what? Huh?
Can I answer?
Yes.
The income.
Okay, Yassine, say.
The income of the people يعني got higher. Our living standards.
Income increase. Yes, the living standard of people increase. So they are looking forward now for better service or more services. This is first one. Second one, Ahmed. He wants
I was gonna say that one, but and I forgot the second point. The second point I don't remember.
Primary decrease is the most important thing that natural resources has been depleted. Okay, so here the answer: increase secondary production and increase tertiary sector production. Even though the output of primary products has fallen, it has done so at a much slower rate than the output in the other 2 sectors. He said that the production here in the case, when I'm going to answer a case study, I have to read the case very well, like in comprehension. You will get your answer from the case study itself. So here he mentioned in the case study that some they're going to produce some products like food products and here they said tobacco and stuff like this. So that's why they switched from primary to secondary, because their and as I see here, Aslan, national output, it's from second sector. So now I knew that a lot of products comes from secondary sector and tertiary sector. And I will add that some natural resources been depleted, that's switched from the primary sector. Woodworkers who worked in agriculture, easy to obtain jobs, tertiary sector of industry, explaining us. Okay, actually, this case, it depends on some extra information gain later in some chapters. Yani you may not be able to answer this case actually relating to only this, but you can think. Now, they was working in primary sector. Now, it's easy for them to switch from primary sector to secondary sector? Of course not. They have to be trained in how to work in secondary sector. So it's not that easy to switch worker from primary sector to secondary sector unless I give them more training, okay? And by the way, in business, I may have 2 different answers. For example, I said, no, it's not easy. And Yassine, for example, he may say, yes, it's easy. And my justification is correct, and his justification is correct. For example, his justification depends that they're gonna to go from primary to secondary gradually. So most of the workers used to work in some factories, so they will be able to adapt the new production process. Okay, so it depends on your justification according to the answer, yes or not. Okay, he said here not necessary. This is one of the problem of being too dependent on one second sector or industry. If the skills required are not the same, if the skills required in primary, secondary, and tertiary are not the same, and the jobs in the other sector are in different location, if they're going to work in different location, then workers from the agriculture sector may find it very difficult to get jobs in other industry. Actually, he phrased the answer in completely different way than me. But both answers are correct. The same meaning, the same understanding. I will understand the same meaning from both of them. Okay? So actually, some student may think that business memorizing only. No, you have to know how to answer by your own understanding and your own words. Okay? C. What do you expect to happen to the relative importance of tertiary industry if income continue to rise in Bangladesh? What will happen? When the income become more, rise more, continue to rise, of course, the importance of tertiary will be more important. So tertiary sector is likely to become relatively more important. A high proportion of higher income tends to be spent on consumer service from the tertiary sector. As we said, when the level of income increase, so I'm expecting that they're going to spend more in tertiary sector. Okay? Now, I classified business till now into their economic activity. What they're going to make, primary, secondary, tertiary. Okay? Now, I'm going to make another classification of business. I will classify the business now according to the owner. Who owns the business? The business owned by whom? Okay, so if the business owned by government, so now it's called public sector. And actually you talked this in social before, maybe in grade 4, public sector. So what's public sector? Public sector when the business owned by whom? By government, owned and controlled by government. Okay, so if the business owned by individuals, normal individuals, so in this case, it will be private sector, okay? So public sector is when the business is owned and controlled by government. So if I asked you, give me some examples of the business that's supposed to be public in public sector. Water supply companies, electricity companies, defense, health, education. Most of this supposed to be owned by government. So what about private sector? As I said, private sector, which is the business owned and controlled by private individuals like hotels and restaurants. Okay? So, do you think that in each country I have only public sector or I have only private sector? Of course not. You will find in any country mix between public and private sector. You will not find ever public only or private only. So I called this country in this case that it has mixed economy. So mixed economy, it has both private and public sector. Okay. Now, I will go to another thing which is called privatization. What's privatization? Actually, you will find it in your book. It's by S. Okay. Most of the thing it's by S because your book is British one. Okay, but my computer, my laptop, it's the language in it is American, so automatically he switched the S to Z. Okay, but what's privatization? From the word privatization, something becomes private, right? So privatization occurs when public sector or government sells some of the business that they owned to private sector. For example, the electricity company in Egypt, for example, it was owned by government. Before, it was owned by government. Now, it becomes private sector business. Government sells the company, the electricity company, to private sector. Okay, so privatization happened when government sells some public sector business owned, public sector business, which means between two dash, owned and controlled by government, to private sector business. Okay, is it good or bad to have such like this? Most of things happened in life has both sides. Okay, most of the things. It has the good side and the bad side. So privatization has its own advantages and its own disadvantages. What's the advantage of privatization? Let's talk about the advantage first. Okay, advantage of privatization. Now, why government sell the electricity company to public sector? First, private sector aims to make money, aims to gain profit. Gaining money means the money that you gain from any business, it's called profit. So most of private sector depends, or their aim or their target is to gain profit. So if they want to gain profit, so they have to do two things. You have to provide an efficient product and service, a good quality product and service with low cost. Efficient here, the word efficient in business means good quality with low cost, which is good thing that you will give people good quality product and you're gonna to control the cost of the business. This is the first advantage of having privatization. Maybe in some countries the issue may differ, but I'm talking about the ideal case, okay? Now, private sector, the government has its own budget, of course. This budget, they have to distribute or spend this budget for many things, thousands of things, on roads, on hospitals, in education, in defense, in anything, many things. So their budget is limited according to each business separately. Maybe they don't have enough money to spend in electricity company. They couldn't develop the electricity company as it's supposed to be. So in this case, when they sell the business to private sector, the private sector, a rich man, for example, now he will have sufficient capital. Capital means the money that he will put in the business. The money that I put in business, this is called capital. He will have sufficient capital or sufficient money to spend in this electricity company than the government can afford. Okay, so this is the second advantage. The third advantage. Now suppose I have 2 or 3 electricity companies. I divide the company, the huge company, into 3 companies. For example, the mobile companies, okay? Now, not the mobile companies, the companies like Mobile, STC, Salat, the telecommunication companies. Yeah. Now, if I have only one company, so there is no competition. So they will control the market. They will control the price of the calls or the price of the internet or whatever. But if I have now more competition, more than one, so they will compete with each other. Each one will try to provide the best service or the best product with the best price. Okay, so this will not happen in public, because in public sector they have only one business owned by one person or one status, which is the government. But in private sector I may have many person, and I will give each one a company or a business, and they will compete with each other. So there will be competition, so they will try to provide the best service with the best price. The session may end. If it ends, just enter with the same link, okay? We will continue with the same link. Okay, so competition between businesses. So now we talked about advantage. Now what about the disadvantage? 2 disadvantages. Now we said that the private sector wants to gain more profit. So he will control the cost. If he will try to control the cost, so he will try to cut the cost as much as he can. So he may get rid of some workers that he may think they are not important to the business. So in this case, unemployment may increase. He doesn't care about who will continue or who will not. How many workers will be unemployed? It's not my business. All my business or my concern is just to make a good profit. So I will get rid of extra persons, or I may let one person do 2 jobs in order to cut cost, which is not good for citizens. And another disadvantage for private sector, that he will not concentrate in social objectives. He will concentrate only on money, in practical things. So I will not concentrate, are you happy in your work or not? or I will provide for you some social community. It's not my business. All my business is to gain profit. Okay. So now here I have this. I summarized. That the business is divided by its activity according to primary, secondary, and tertiary. And business could be divided according to the ownership to private sector or public sector. Now I finished chapter 2. Any question?
No.
Miss, can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
The page before the case study كان في point اللي
Mhm.
هو developed countries competition في industrialization أو حاجة زي كده.
This one. Most
Yes.
developed countries are losing competitiveness in manufacturing, so they go to tertiary sector.
How do they
As I
lose
said,
competitiveness?
UK, because some countries may develop more technology and they will have more competitiveness in the market, so they may attract more customers. So in this case, they may lose the competitiveness in the market. As I said, in UK and China, UK was the most developed country in the world and has the most industry. But after a while, China tried to develop themselves, so they tried to make many factories, they try to produce many products, so they appeal the customer more than UK. So now UK cannot compete with China because China focused more in this secondary industry. So now in this case, UK will have to find another sector to concentrate on it because they find themselves that they lost the competitiveness in the market. Okay?
But this makes production costs lower, صح?
For who?
For the person who buys from China.
Yes, well, that's why. Well, China produced good quality product. طبعا it has many qualities, okay, with least price. So now you have two products with the same quality. Which one you're gonna to buy? The expensive one or the cheap one? Of course, the cheap one. So you're gonna to choose the Chinese product, and you will not get or you will not buy England or British product, English product. Okay. So now when Britain or when England find themselves that they do not have much customer, they lost their competitiveness in the market because now I have another good competitor. So in this case, what I will do, I will try two things: to switch to another sector, which is more, I will be more efficient in it, or try to improve yourself in this industry. If you couldn't develop yourself in this industry, for example, to try to find cheaper raw materials, actually their workers, their wages are higher than the Chinese wages. Yani if you compare between worker, a Chinese worker and an English worker, of course English worker will cost you a lot. Why? According to the number of population, according to how many workers want to work. Okay. So in this case, I found that I have another competitor which is more efficient than me. We said efficient, good quality with least price. So in this case, I will try to find another thing to concentrate in. It could be tertiary. Yani by default, it will be tertiary because no one will go back. Most countries will go in front, yani in the next stage. Thank you for your watching. See you in next session, inshallah.